What's up, guys? What's up? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith. He is Robbie the Fire Bernstein, figuring out sticker issues as we get the show started for you on this this Monday, our first show of the week. How you feeling, Rob?
I'm doing well. I had a very great weekend of porching. Got home late last night, but I'm ready to go, my friend.
Oh, what do you got next?
This weekend, I think I'm doing hosting for Sam Tripoli and Eddie Bravo on 2 random gigs.
Ooh,
Looking
that's
forward
fun.
for hanging out with those guys, and then
love
to
those guys. Don't try to wrestle Eddie.
I will not be starting any shit with Eddie. I've never met him. I don't typically start fights in green rooms, and certainly not with the trained professionals.
I would just say my advice: keep it standing. If you guys do get to fighting, I'd test out your boxing. You don't want to go to the ground with Eddie Bravo.
Yeah, I will not be starting shit with Eddie Bravo. And then I'm off to Minnesota, and then I got long runs out in Tennessee and other places. Go check it out on porchstore.com.
Yeah, I feel like Eddie Bravo, I want to keep going with fighting Eddie Bravo jokes. I feel like Eddie Bravo would, like, as he's choking you out, he would like whisper in your ear that like the dinosaurs killed Kennedy or something like that. And then I feel like my last thought before I went unconscious would be like, I don't think that's right. And be like,
yeah,
I don't think he can substantiate that.
You just wake up after getting choked out by Eddie and you're like, the world is flat.
You go, oh my God, that's all it took was one omoplata into me realizing he was making sense this whole time. So Eddie, well, yeah, that's great, dude. I love those guys. That should be fun. And then I don't know, me and you will be back this fall. We'll be back on the road hard for the rest of the year, but I really don't have much else. I got the Comedy Mothership as my only last date in August, and that one's all sold out already, boys. But
get tickets early for Side Splitters. That's a great club out in Tampa. That's going to sell out. I don't even remember off the top of my head what else we got this year, but I know that one's on the calendar. There's also Tacoma, Washington, Washington, and Spokane.
That's right. Tacoma, Spokane. What do we got? Vegas. We got doing I think we're doing a weekend out there at the Wise Guys out there. Yeah, comicdavesmith.com for all that stuff. And then I do have a couple big podcasts that I'll be doing this month. So I will, I'm doing another vacation with the family and trying to not travel quite as much while my kids are enjoying the summer, but I will have some stuff for you guys. So don't you worry about that. And it looks like we've both agreed. I think we still have to figure out a time, but we've both agreed tomorrow to debate. It looks like now I'm debating Alex Berenson, which is a twist I did not see coming. Not somebody who I saw being on my enemies list. But
where are you debating him?
Rob Aurora is on his show. Who I like Rob very much. He's a buddy of mine, and I did his podcast a little while back. I think he's just put that episode out actually that we did from some hotel room. I can't remember which one of our trips this was on, but he's great. And he was like he did like regular podcasts with Jay Bhattacharya during COVID. This is Rob, and he was great on it. He had we had like, I don't think we've actually ever met, but we were like started messaging back and forth. He was the young guy who used to write for the New York Post, and he had written it was a bunch of articles. He was basically like a young guy who really kind of got radicalized against wokeism, and then also was very, very good through all of COVID. And so he kind of naturally is a fan of both me and Alex Berenson because COVID was his kind of defining issue, which I think is true for a lot of people around his age. But so anyway, he was kind of, he's, I guess, a good moderator for it, but he asked if I wanted to do it. And I was like, sure, I guess. I'm not even, I think maybe I shouldn't have said yes to this, but I said yes. So
what is the debate topic?
I don't know. He called Alex Berenson out of nowhere, called me a Holocaust denier. That's the debate, I guess. And I will say, and maybe this is something I have to examine.
Kind of say that's a fun debate topic where it starts off with the debate prompt is Dave Smith's a Holocaust denier, and you go, I do not deny the Holocaust.
You go, okay, so now that I won that debate, what's like? Yeah, it's such a weird thing because you're like, well, here's the thing, I'm not an authority on too many things, but even Douglas Murray would concede that I'm an expert on me. So like, I win this one. What do you got next? But I will say, and this is something, maybe it does something I need to like think about more, something, but there is something where and I don't know, this does make sense to me in my mind, and I've felt this way for many years. But there is something where, like, look, obviously, I'm at this point, I'm very well known for being a pretty outspoken critic of the government of Israel, as well as, you know, the Israel lobby, broadly speaking, including the neoconservatives and AIPAC and the whole thing. You know, and so I'm known for that. And I'm also a Jew, and I also, like, my grandfather's whole portion of the family comes from Germany, and my grandfather escaped Nazi Germany, and the rest of his whole family got killed there. And so I've gotten, over the years, I guess, just from being me, I get it from, you know, all sides. So I've interacted with people who are like, you know, whatever you would call Holocaust deniers, who are like, oh, you're full of shit, that never happened to your family. And I've interacted with people who are claiming I'm a Holocaust denier. It's weird to get both. I will say, what Alex Berenson does actually does piss me off substantially more than the people who even really deny the Holocaust, or the people who really, because there's something about, like, you know, arguing that you think a historic event didn't happen, even if it happened, it always to me seemed like, okay, you could argue it's like, it's silly or it's ignorant and they're wrong, and certainly you could argue there's malice behind that. It was Christopher Cantwell in Michael Malice's book, when he interviewed him, who said, he asked him, like, if he denied the Holocaust, and he said, he goes, you know, it probably happened. He goes, everyone I've ever met who says they don't think the Holocaust happens, wish it would happen. So, like, he's basically saying, like, everyone who doesn't think it happens sure does seem like they'd like it to happen again. Now, I don't know if that's exactly true. I think he was being kind of tongue in cheek, but there is something particularly about people who, like, level that accusation at me based on absolutely nothing. It's just like, it seems like a particularly fucked up thing to tell a Jewish guy whose family died, you know, from the Nazis, to be like, you are downplaying how bad the Nazis were. And it does, I would say, maybe I should grow out of this, but I did say this. Rav put me and Alex Berenson on a text message right after this all went down this morning. And I did just Alex Berenson was like, well, do you want to debate this tomorrow? And started laying out, like, how he feels. And this is after he called me a Holocaust denier. And I literally just said, he said something like, I don't usually give up private text information, but this seems fairly harmless, and I just want to be honest about this. But he said, like, he goes, just so you know, I've also been critical of the Israeli government, and I've also been getting some flack about it, and blah. And this is after he just publicly called me a Holocaust denier. And I just went, Alex, I don't give a fuck what you say or what you've been called. If we were in person right now, I promise you we wouldn't be having a debate. But I'm in. See you tomorrow. Just so you know, that's the energy I'm bringing. So, like, that was just what I said to it. But, like, am I crazy to just be like, dude, that's like, I don't know. It's like, I think I said this years ago, and some of the Groypers pulled this up and were giving me shit about it. But I said, look, dude, you don't call a Jew a Nazi, or a Nazi a Jew. Those are always fighting words. That's the most offensive thing you could say to those two groups, you know? And there's something about someone like Alex Berenson, particularly someone who I've met. You know, I wouldn't say I know him well, but I've met him. We've messaged before, and I've gone out of my way to defend in situations where he was being unfairly smeared. And I defended him both on the Joe Rogan show and on the Tucker Carlson show. Me and you have said on this show endless nice things about him and his coverage of COVID. He really was great during COVID. This doesn't change any of that. But just, I mean, Rob, honestly, I want your opinion here. And you could feel free to, you know, we disagree twice a year. You could feel free to make this one of those times. But, like, is this like a little bit crazy? So Alex Berenson, and just so everybody sees this, Sarah Fields, who I don't know and I don't follow, I don't know how this tweet ended up in my timeline, but I just saw it and responded. She's a Republican state delegate. So she tweeted, this is how the conversation starts. She tweeted, You cannot be conservative and pro-choice. That was her tweet, which I, is a debatable point, but it certainly is debatable that she's correct. I could see a strong argument for that. It makes some argument that you're not really conservative if you believe in abortion. You could argue that, like, I'm just coming up with an argument for her. I don't know exactly what her argument would be, but perhaps something that, like, the foundational value of conservatism is Christianity, and the foundational principle of Christianity is the sanctity of life. You could make an argument that you can't really be a conservative unless you're pro-life. Or in her words, you can't be a conservative and pro-choice. So I quote tweeted that and said, and you cannot be pro-life and pro-war. So just kind of building on what she's saying, but you really can't, there's a lot of things that, now look, I guess if you want to be really technical here, this is a tweet. Okay, you could, I suppose, be pro a purely just defensive war where innocent people aren't getting killed. Like, you could support fighting back against the Red Army as they invade the United States of America or something like that. But anyway, a lot of people, you could be pro-life and pro-death penalty without contradicting yourself. You could say that, like, everybody has the right to life, and then you forfeit that right when you're convicted of a heinous crime or something like that. But you really can't, like, support what Israel's doing to Gaza and claim you're pro-life. It's just too ridiculous. If you're saying that, like, everything that the pro-life advocates, and by the way, I'm pro-life, I'm not knocking it, but everything that they argue in every single debate, that every pro-choice, pro-life debate ever, is like, no, look, you just can't kill a baby. That option has to be taken off the table. And there's a very strong argument for that. Now, the pro-choicers will try to go to these, like, well, what if she's raped and it's incest and it's this, and which is, fair enough. Like, there are extreme examples like this. And then the pro-lifer has to contend with that. But you can't support a policy where tens of thousands of babies are going to be killed because you say it's worth it to get Hamas in order to do that and still maintain it. Anyway, that's what this started off of. Now, you might be wondering, Rob, how does that lead to Alex Berenson claiming I'm a Holocaust denier? Like, so yes, this took just as much of a left turn for me as it seems like for you. So then Alex Berenson quote tweeted me and said the man who thinks Auschwitz was a spa and Unit 731 was a cool sushi place. So he literally just comes out and just goes, says the guy who thinks Auschwitz was a spa, says the guy who's a Holocaust denier. So then, it was literally, it must have been in the middle of the night. I woke up, one of my kids woke up, and I went to the bathroom, and then I saw this tweet, and so I just responded, and I said, hold on one second, let me just see what I said. I said, hey, Alex, thanks for being so great on COVID. It's okay that you're a retarded liberal on everything else. I thought that was a reasonable response at 2 a.m. What time was this that I got? 2:15 a.m. I was out of sleep. That was just what I came up with, which I did not, think that much of. And then this morning, Alex Berenson starts tweeting more at me about this. And then it becomes clear that what he's saying is that the same old thing, that he can justify calling me a Holocaust denier because I said Daryl Cooper wasn't denying the Holocaust in his comments. So therefore, I'm also a Holocaust denier because I said that Daryl Cooper wasn't downplaying the Nazi atrocities when he, quote unquote, was. So that's what that, but then this, I just thought this was crazy. This is actually what took it to the level of me being furious. Like, I'm glad I'm not going to see Alex Berenson today because I'd probably do something immature. Alex Berenson, who has 500,000 fucking Twitter followers, tell me if you think this is crazy, Rob. I do want your opinion on this. He pins that tweet calling me a Holocaust denier. That is now his pinned tweet, is Says the man who thinks Auschwitz was a spa. Is that not kind of crazy? Like that's a wild line for somebody who who has has defended you. Like we know each other. Like he's messaged me to be like, hey, thanks for having my back on that show or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that type of shit. That's kind of crazy to say I'm going to advertise to my 500,000 followers that this Jewish guy is a Holocaust denier. And by the way, when I throw the Jewish thing in there, I'm not saying it'd be just as shitty to do that to somebody who's not Jewish. I'm not saying that like it should be more off limits to say that about a Jew than a non-Jew. Everybody should have a right to have whatever views they want to have and to not be smeared and in this despicable way. It's just like it is a particularly like offensive thing to claim. Like you're basically saying like, oh, you are defending the people who fucking slaughter your people. Like downplaying that is a particularly like egregious thing to say, especially when you can't back it up with shit. So anyway, Rob, I'm curious your thoughts. And I'm also weird. I don't think I've ever gone into a debate like this before where I'm like, what the fuck are we even debating here? All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Proton Mail. Proton Mail is an email service by Proton designed to replace your Gmail account for all of your important stuff so you can have a more secure emailing experience. Proton Mail is a great way to start all over again. Your Gmail is probably like mine, buried with thousands of messages from the past. And you can keep using your Gmail for garbage, but use Proton Mail for the important stuff. Proton will always have a freemium version, and you can later change to a paid product if you're convinced about the product. But for right now, you can go create an account for free. Check them out, Proton Mail. All right, let's get back into the show. What is this?
Well, so I think you're all on Twitter and being a little bit hyperbolic. Now, I understand that, you've got a reputation and it's easy to censor and dismiss people by pretending like they're Holocaust deniers or otherwise, and particularly from someone who's as smart and credentialed as Alex is. You don't really want the smart people backing up the pure stupidity of the internet and these censorship tactics of which he was a victim to. So I certainly understand wanting to fight back against it. However, he's a fascinating individual because his COVID was so sharp and it was so analytical and it was so factual based that sometimes it's surprising when there's topics that you can agree with someone so much on one thing and somehow see something else so differently. So I think it's really cool that the two of you are debating. I think he's playing the Twitter radio war game a little bit. In a way it's good because he's so passionate about whatever point of view I guess he actually wants to debate you on that he's a Jewish autist too, and he's kind of playing all those cards of like, no, I'm gonna get this guy. So I think it's fun that the two of you are debating, and I imagine that it's going to de-escalate, but I think at the moment all statements that you just mentioned are pretty hyperbolic.
Yeah, it's look, it'll be interesting to see how this goes, but I just don't. I mean, I don't even know what defense he can possibly mount.
I think he's trying to debate you on something else, and that essentially that the way that you're talking out against, I don't know his stance on Israel Gaza, but my guess is he just thinks that you're giving dangerous cover to real anti-Semitism, and he's afraid about that. And I'm sure that's the grounds that he's looking to have a debate with you on, and that he's a little bit charged up about it. I don't think he actually thinks you're an anti-Semite, and you're fair to be like, hey, it's not fair to say that on the internet.
I by the way, I'm not saying this to like knock him. I mean, like I don't give a shit about knocking him at this point, obviously, but it might be because he was like famously like kicked off Twitter and then won a lawsuit and got back on Twitter. I think that's how it happened, right? They settled or something like that, and he got back on Twitter. I think his engagement is like, I think his account's like not right, because whatever the number, it's like literally it has like 300 likes on it, that tweet, and it's his pinned tweet on his account with 500,000 people. Like I'd like to think that that's just because the argument's so stupid and more people agree with me, but like it seems like maybe there's something more than that going on. Like I know I've heard of that before, where accounts are reinstated and they still don't exactly work right. Like you're kind of back, but you're not really back. But I guess the point I was trying to get at is like, it's kind of like, who the fuck cares? Like, You know, it's only, I only care because it's Alex Berenson, and it's a guy that I've like publicly defended several times. But there is, it's a funny situation where you're almost like, just understanding the way debates work and the way that they're perceived. It's kind of like, I don't get what he thinks is going to come of this, because you kind of already lose the debate when you start with that. Like whatever other topic he would have wanted to debate me on, he has to start with defending calling me a Holocaust denier in his pinned tweet when he's got nothing, you know what I mean, at all on that. It's pretty wild. It's like, well, now you can't possibly win a debate because you start with such a fucking deficit that it's like, oh, you've already been exposed as being a liar who will smear someone in the most vicious way. Anyway, sad. I mean, it did, by the way, I'm saving some of it. It got even nastier than that. I mean, I called them all types of fucking names after that. So
on Twitter or in the text?
Both.
Oh, all right. Juicy.
Yeah. All right,
I'm looking forward to this. This sounds like a fun watch. Get the popcorn, folks.
Well, yeah, I am really. This one bugged me, so we'll see. I got, I guess, 24 hours until I do it, so maybe I'll have calmed down a little bit by the time it actually happens. But we'll see. But I'm not going to go easy on that. It's like a fucking ridiculous thing to say, and it's particularly, by the way, and I know we've discussed this so many times. Daryl has, I know, at least like 5 or 6 different times in interviews I've seen him explain what he was saying. Like if anyone actually does have any like genuine curiosity, like, hey, what'd you mean by that on Tucker? Because I kind of took it this way. Maybe you meant it this way. Or, he's explained it over and over again. And the kind of hilarious part of all of it to me is that the actual point that Daryl was making, which actually is pretty clear in the Tucker interview, is like technically speaking, objectively speaking, what Daryl Cooper's point is the opposite of Holocaust denial. It's the polar opposite. What Daryl's point actually was that it does not matter the circumstance in which anyone in Nazi custody died. They were murdered by the Nazi regime. Like his argument is that all the prisoners of war who died, all the people who died in death camps, all the people who died in concentration camps, all the people who died in any situation like that, it's murder. That was his whole point, was that it doesn't matter. Like the point he was making, that was when the Nazis first invaded Poland, and then when they first invaded the Soviet Union, I think really it's talking about the one when they first invaded the Soviet Union, that they like immediately rounded up like millions of POWs. And then there's all these correspondence where they're talking about how they have no idea how they're going to feed all of them. They have no idea how they're going to clothe all of them and all this stuff. And he's going, well, hey, if you launch an aggressive war and you invade a country and you take millions of prisoners of war, then you're responsible for having a plan on how to feed them. You can't just get there and then go, whoopsie, like you murdered those people if you take them. Kind of like in the same way, we would all say, murder is a worse crime than kidnapping, right? Like kidnapping will get you whatever amount of years, but murder is going to get you life. Like we all consider murder to be a worse crime than kidnapping. But if you kidnap someone and lock them in your basement and don't feed them and they starve to death, then you murdered that person. Like you're getting charged with murder now too. You don't just like, it doesn't matter if you were like, oh, I was really light on food that month. It's like, whoa, no, once you do this, you have an obligation to at least make sure that person's fed, or you're getting the murder charge too. Now, anyway, no one can deny any of what Daryl said. No one really has an argument against the logic. No one's arguing he didn't take millions of prisoners of war right after invading the Soviet Union. They just go, well, you're making it sound like the Holocaust was just an accident and they just didn't have the food. And over again, he's been like, no, I'm not saying that at all. So once you heard that, you'd go, oh, okay. Like if you're being a somewhat honest person, you'd go, oh, you know what? I assumed you meant this, but you're saying you didn't. So that's that. Issue solved. And like, but again, the point is that if you listen to the actual point Daryl's making, it's the opposite of denying Nazi responsibility for the Holocaust. He's claiming like it really doesn't matter which way anybody died. It's all murder. Seems pretty reasonable to me.
Well, I'm excited for it. I fell off with him. It wasn't just post the COVID coverage. I used to be a subscriber to the Substack, and I didn't love the way that the lawsuit was handled because he had promised not settling to get the information out. But he's a very sharp guy. His COVID coverage was really fantastic, and he was kind of at the front lines and cutting edge of kind of debunking all of that information that was coming out. So
I'll never take that away from him. You're absolutely right.
But also just, I think to my eye, he might be the sharpest guy that you're going up against yet. And I'm going to assume he's just going to pivot away from that original stance and was goading you into
but I don't
fight.
care. I don't care how sharp he is. He's not pivoting away from that without. I mean, there's no way we're not doing 20 minutes on that before we get to anything else.
Well, I'm excited to watch this one. I feel like it's
weird. You're right, though, in a sense. I hadn't really thought about it like that, but he might be like the sharpest, most formidable guy I've ever debated. But the debate is on a topic that is just impossible to win. There's just no way you can't win that. It's just, you can't require people to be that stupid and dishonest. Like, no, obviously, first of all, obviously there's a Daryl Cooper didn't say what you're claiming he said. That's one level of the debate, right? But then like there's a very, there's the argument for that is overwhelming. Then you got to make the argument that because I said that's not what he was saying, therefore I'm also saying the thing that he's not saying. I mean, like it doesn't matter how intelligent Alex Berenson is, you're not going to win that argument. But hey, we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. Let's see that happen tomorrow. I'm sure it'll. Anyway, okay. Let's move on to some other stuff. I'm sorry. I don't mean to make this all about a petty feud, but I will say it is, and maybe this is just me post hoc justifying spending a half hour talking about this, but I will say that I do think this Alex Berenson, and this is probably like the only thing I could think of. Is like, what would I even want to talk about after this? Because it does seem like it should be a debate that's 5 minutes long, me chastising him, going, you're going to take down that pinned tweet now, you fucking weirdo? Like, okay. And then walking off. But the only other thing that I think is kind of interesting about this is that it is like, it's like the way wokeism, like, became this thing that felt like a humiliation ritual, and it felt like as two guys who were comedians who were really young bucks, the up and comers as they call them at the time. But during the rise of wokeism, and me and you kind of felt like, man, why do so many of our favorite comedians just have to humiliate themselves in front of the world? Like that just sucks. And you see it over and over again, and like people like Stephen Colbert, who no one now that he's in the news for being fired even remembers was hilarious. Like Stephen Colbert was so good. And then he had to just like humiliate himself on the altar of this dumb, TDS and wokeism and shit like that. Well, in the same way, it does seem to me that this fucking Israel Gaza shit has just led to so many people just destroying their own credibility. It's been very like interesting to watch. And, and I don't take pleasure in any of that. At least I do take pleasure in it when it's people who really deserved it, but I don't take pleasure in it when it's people who have done really good work. When it's Jordan Peterson or it's Alex Berenson or like someone like that, you're like, oh, this is actually like, I guess it's good. It's healthy overall because it's like, yes, you exposed something in the old system and now this same tendency is being exposed in you. Like really the same tendency of just like smearing people with bullshit, like the exact same thing that happened to you when you started doing it. You're now exposed for committing the same thing. And that is something that is just, it's a major theme of American politics over the last 2 years or so. Like, really since October 7th. Anyway, speaking of all of that, let's move into a little bit more of the political. So this is a dynamic that I think is very, very interesting, Rob. And I want to play this this CNN here. We'll play the clip here. It's another, I did this the other day. It's another CNN just reading the polls. Again, as I always say with these things, take polls with a grain of salt, take CNN with a grain of salt. But I did find this to be kind of interesting, and it seems, again, just like
2 grains of salt make 1 actual piece of salt.
Yeah, well, that's right. There you go.
It's both CNN Almost. And it's a poll, and it's not the information that they want to put out into the world. It might actually be true.
No, it's, I think you got your math wrong on that. No. I think if it's, I think it would be like the percentages like divided by each other, not added to each other, like, because you got both the untrustworthiness of CNN and the untrustworthiness of a poll. So anyway, whatever. The point is this: both with the last CNN polls that I played and this one, I do think that while polls are often wrong, these trends are hard to fake. And so when you see things like Donald Trump having his highest approval rating ever when he first came back into office the second term, and then his approval rating falling off, and seeing that he's like 60 points underwater on the Epstein issue, you're like, I do think that that's getting at a trend here, whether those numbers are exact or not, like this is. And this, I think, might be an even more fascinating political trend. And let me tell you, one that makes me very optimistic about the moment that we're living in and the future. But I'll get into that in a second. But let's play the CNN clip.
This one was a surprising one to me, given everything that's going on in Russia, what happened in Iran, what happened in Gaza. But the bottom line is Democrats in the American voters' minds cannot hack it. What are we talking about? Party trust more in foreign policy. Well, the GOP holds an average 6-point lead in the month of July. Look at this. Fox News came out last week, plus 3 points for Republicans on foreign policy over the Democrats. You think that number is not high enough for you? How about the Wall Street Journal? GOP plus 8 points when they match congressional Democrats up against congressional Republicans. The bottom line is this: despite everything that's going on in the world right now, Republicans are more trusted on Democrats when it comes to foreign policy and the world at large.
How has this changed, or how does this compare to during the campaign?
Yeah, again, this to me was a surprising number, since Donald Trump said he'd come in and broker all these peace deals. And while he's brokered some, he hasn't obviously brokered one between Ukraine and Russia, and obviously the situation in Gaza. But take a look here. Trust more in foreign policy. You go back to 2024. Trump had a 6-point advantage over Kamala Harris. Again, look at the average right now. It hasn't moved despite everything that's going on in the world. You see Republicans plus 6 points here. And this goes back to a larger issue that we have discussed over and over again here in the mornings. Despite any misgivings that the American public might have about Donald Trump, when you match up Republicans against Democrats, Donald Trump against Democrats, still at this particular point, they are doing significantly better than you might expect. And when it comes to the issue of foreign policy, again, what you see is in the American voters' minds, Democrats, simply put, can't hack it. More voters trust Republicans on foreign policy, very much like they did back during the 2024 campaign.
All right. So I guess the reason why I find this to be so fascinating, and I could get into this, and you might be seeing where I'm going with this, Rob, but there's something like this almost seems to indicate to me that the two-party system itself might actually be in some real trouble. And when I say that essentially means the way this regime operates, which is through a two-party system. As somebody who has spent some time, I have dabbled in a third-party politics, and you cannot overstate how much the rules are rigged against third parties. And this is part of the reason why there's never a third party who wins. The rules are just so rigged against third parties on behalf of the two parties, down to the fact that for many years, and this almost like seems like something that's like a little thing that's lost in time, although obviously the debate was a big deal this last year. It was the moment Joe Biden had to drop out of the race, or the moment that led to Joe Biden having to drop out of the race, being forced out of the race. But for many years, access to the debates was the whole game. Before podcasts and the internet were huge, it was like, dude, this is going to be the one thing where the entire country gets to see who's running for president and what are they arguing about. And the debates, the debates themselves are just run by the two parties. Third parties are not allowed in. They set the rules, and then if you hit the rule, they just change the rule. They did it to Gary Johnson. Like, you have to have at least 2 major polls where you're polling at least 10%. And then he's like, I have 2 polls where I'm polling at 10%. And then they go, oh, we just made it 4 polls, like, or we just made it 15% or whatever. They just won't let you in. And so anyway, you have this 2-party system, and the way this works, what is been called the duopoly, the way this works is that you keep it so that essentially these 2 parties are the ones that you have a chance. Like, look, we live in a democracy, but you don't actually get to decide anything, but you do get to vote for who decides things. And you can vote for party A or party B. Party A and party B both agree on the 15 things that are most important to us, but they really fight about these other things. So like the Republicans and Democrats might really feel different about abortion, but when it comes to like war or monetary policy or fiscal policy or the militarization of the police, the prison industrial complex, like any of these, just a number of issues that just don't really come up that much, they completely agree. And so what happens is you have the illusion of having an option, but you just don't really have an option about these 10 most important things, let's say, probably more than 10. But so and what always happens throughout my entire life is that this system has worked remarkably well to keep the American people docile and accepting of the regime that rules over them. I mean, like there's been many times throughout history where, a president ends his presidency in disaster, in disgrace, and the American people go, all right, then we're going to vote for the other party, And this happened several times in my lifetime. This is what always happens, right? Like if Jimmy Carter is like a failed president, well then by God, we will elect Ronald Reagan, and Ronald Reagan wasn't viewed as a failed president. And so, we kept George H.W. Bush in there, but he didn't do too good. So then we elect Bill Clinton, and, George W. Bush comes in, we hate his guts by the end of it. So we'll elect Barack Obama, and Barack Obama fails. Well, we'll give you Donald Trump. And the way this works is that what always happens is one party fucks up. And so then people start supporting the other party, because that's the only weapon you have against the party that's fucking up. And this is really the first time that I can think of in my life. I mean, this is where if you're starting the presidency where Donald Trump has his highest approval ratings and the Democrats as a party have their lowest approval ratings, and then Donald Trump just starts fucking everything up and his approval ratings are coming down, well, then what's supposed to happen here is that the Democrats' approval rating comes up because people start supporting the Democrats who are out there going, hey, this guy's fucking up. That's how the American political system has always worked. And I think now this is like the first time I've ever seen this where Donald Trump is fucking up. Everybody agrees. His approval's coming down. Not everybody, but his approval's coming down. He's embroiled in these scandals. None of the stuff, as they're saying, none of the stuff he ran on is coming true. He couldn't end the war in Ukraine. He couldn't end the war in Gaza. He's the first president who bombed Iran. He's bombing the Houthis. The trade shit isn't really working at all. He's blowing up the debt. He's just, the mass deportations aren't happening, and the ones that are crazy, politicized and not going over well. And yet the Democrats are still sitting on like a 25% approval rating with no increase in sight. And every time you put them up in a head-to-head poll like this, it's still the exact same thing. I just think that is a very, I don't want to like overplay it because we'll see where all of this goes. But don't you think that's a pretty interesting development? I've never seen that happen before.
Yeah, well, currently the Democratic bench, they just have zero talent. The country knows the extent by which they were lied to by the Democratic Party. We just got over the guy who was in office has dementia. I mean, there were just the amount of lies that the Democratic Party and the woke movement and all the other nonsense that they really shoved upon us for, a pretty substantial amount of time. The two biggest ones would be, keeping the COVID thing going, the Russia hoax, and then, hey, the president doesn't have dementia. And even if you want to shelve all of that, there's not a single stud on their team that can look like they can manage any problems, talk, there's nobody captivating that you go, oh, I trust this person. They're just kind of embroiled in all these scandals and all these lies without a single person. If you go listen to Bernie Sanders, you go listen to Elizabeth Warren, you go listen to any of these people, you're like, I don't want that person running anything. And then you might look at Donald Trump and go, I hate this. But then you look at the other people and you're like, well, I think that's worse. So yeah, it is an interesting dynamic that would seem to showcase that maybe there will be room for a third party or a growing interest in a third party. But it certainly is interesting that amidst all the chaos of the first 6 months of Donald Trump, there's zero talent on the Democratic side. And so there's still zero support for them either.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that's it. I think that's exactly right. And I guess maybe there's a couple things even more than what you said, although I do think that just essentially the essence of what you're saying is right, is that it's just that the Democrats fucked up so bad on so many major things in a row while also having no talent to be able to sell it. So like, it's not just that, like, and again, I just, you know, you can't overstate this. This is the stuff we talk about all the time. But I really do think we've been on these issues that are the main ones, and been on the right side of them. But it's between, like, let's say the first one is Russiagate, such a huge one. This huge claim about how the president is involved in a conspiracy with the Russians to overthrow the government, getting that wrong. Then, and the woke insanity, COVID just, you know, destroyed them. It aged so poorly, you know, it's really, really hard to kind of overstate how much the needle moved in a period. It was, you know, again, COVID probably, even though, you know, like people obviously, like, you know, I've become known for talking about the war stuff, but COVID is really what launched us. What launched this show was, it was just like, it was, we were like a little podcast who I think we're, you know, doing a good job, but we were just so right and ahead of the curve on COVID. And when you started that way, it just like, it became like this thing that just catapulted you, because the whole country moved so far in our direction so quickly. And then we had this street cred from like being like, hey, we were here the whole time. But it was like, you know, there was a point where something like 80% almost of adult Americans got the vaccines. There was a point where lockdowns were like supported, and there were, you know, and then everybody turned on it and realized it was all bullshit. Thank God. But so anyway, so there was that, and then the Biden being senile thing, and then so now you have all of this, and who are your salesmen? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and who do you got on the bench? Like you said, nobody. Even Bernie Sanders, you've been around this whole time, man. You're too attached to all of this. You never stood up against any of it while it was happening. But then on top of that, and this is why I really do, the more I think about this at this point, I go, you know, and maybe this sounds convenient to say, but I really do think, I mean this, that it was the right thing to support Donald Trump, and it's the right thing to not support him now. Like, I just think that the Donald Trump winning was necessary to break up this system. And now he's such a failure who actually, you know, isn't going to himself break up the system at all, that now he's got to be turned on too. I think that's kind of like the only hope we have, because really, I think the other thing is that, as we've been saying for months now, you know, the Democrats, they lost their propaganda apparatus. And I think that's really a huge part of all of this too, is that it's not 2017. It's not 2017 where CNN and MSNBC can report all day long about Trump's tower meeting with the Russians. And oh my God, you know, and we have, you know, if you remember, Rob, do you remember back to the beginnings of Russiagate? Is that these were the things they had? Do you remember the things they had to sell Russiagate on? Like what they really harped on was the Podesta emails, right? Russia hacked the Podesta emails, and I guess the DNC emails too, or whatever. The Trump Tower meeting, and that off-the-cuff comment where Donald Trump said, Russia, if you have any more of the emails, I'm sure you'd be handsomely rewarded in the media to release all of them, right? And that was, but then at the time, maybe it sounded kind of compelling. But once you looked into it, it was like, Russia didn't hack Podesta's emails. There's never been any evidence put forward of that at all. And even the thing they tried, like one thing they said, like, oh, they had Russian IP addresses, But then like everybody who knows anything, and I don't, but everyone who knows anything about like cyber attacks was like, IP addresses are like a 15-year-old can alter the IP address. That means absolutely nothing. No real like hacking of official government documents would be done by somebody who would leave their own IP address, essentially. And then the Tower meeting was just like, oh, some Russian lawyer said she had dirt on Hillary Clinton, and they were like, okay, and they took a meeting, and then she didn't, and they were like, okay. And that was it. And then the Trump thing where he said it on TV was just like a dumb joke that Donald Trump made that they tried to make. And somehow they tried to argue that like, no, this was evidence of a conspiracy. And you were like, and that's their secret channel? Is that Donald Trump just openly says at press conferences? Like it was too ridiculous. Anyway, but back then they could get people watching and they could kind of still control the narrative a little bit. And now they just can't. And so nobody, like, it's amazing. Nobody is buying, as much as they're all disgusted with Donald Trump, none of them are buying that the Democrats are the answer. And then I think the other thing, Rob, maybe just in addition to what you said too, is that the Democrats are specifically discredited on the issues that Donald Trump is struggling with right now. So like all of them, like it's like, oh, he didn't end the war in Ukraine. It's like, yeah, but that the Democrats were, this is their policy continued. So whatever. It doesn't help them any. And he's still supporting the destruction of Gaza. Okay. So was Joe Biden. We all know they would have kept doing that too. And then specifically with the Epstein thing, it's like, everybody, even the people like who are upset with Donald Trump's handling of this, it seems to be unanimously agreed on that, like, yeah, well, we know the Democrats were going to cover it up too. I mean, they've been covering it. They were in for 4 years too. There was never even talk of releasing anything of Epstein. Like, obviously, we know if Joe Biden or Kamala Harris were president, that like, yeah, that would just continue as is. So weirdly, without having their propaganda apparatus and with this horrible track record, they don't get any good grace points from the Republicans fucking up. Like nothing. Really is that is a very interesting dynamic to me. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Hexclad. I love this company. They have the best kitchenware, pots and pans and knives. I got a bunch of their stuff. Me and my wife both love them. If you're looking to upgrade your cookware, definitely check out Hexclad. You've probably heard of them. They've completely revolutionized pots and pans by combining the performance of stainless steel with the convenience and easy cleanup of non-stick. But Hexclad's innovations don't stop there. Their Japanese Damascus steel knives are as sharp as they are tough, perfect for leveling up your meal prep. And their sleek pepper mill lets you season like a pro with precision and style. Gordon Ramsay is a tough critic, and he uses Hexclad both at home and in his Michelin-star restaurants. Hexclad products also come with a lifetime warranty. These are the last kitchen essentials you're ever going to have to buy. So check them out now. For a limited time only, our listeners will get 10% off their order with this exclusive link, hexclad.com/problem. Just head over to hexclad.com/problem. That's HEXCLAD.com/problem for 10% off your order. All right, let's get back into the show. All right. Any other thoughts on that, Rob, or you want to move on to Trump's latest Epstein comments?
Well, I also just find it fascinating that CNN will even take the time and let you know that the Democrats are losing. I find that interesting as well.
Yeah, well, they have been like if you remember, we covered back when they were covering Trump's record high approval ratings at a time too. I think they've gotten the memo that, and this was one of the things, by the way, I think was one of the biggest, most important turning points of Trump winning the presidency again, is that like they did stop pretending. The MSNBC and CNN and the New York Times and the Washington Post and like all of them, they acknowledged starting then that the podcasts are the media now. Like even their whole conversation was like, how do we find a Joe Rogan of the left? Like, how do we move into, whereas before that, there was like 5 or 6 years of them still pretending that like, nah, dude, that's the fringe over there. This is really where it's at. And they gave up on that. So I think they are like, yeah, we'll let you know that like the Democrats are incredibly unpopular and Trump was at his highest popularity. I think you just kind of couldn't deny it at a certain point. There's just once the approval ratings for the Democrats are in the 20s, you're like, yeah, I mean, you can't pretend they're popular anymore. But
yeah,
anyway,
they got the memo that Kamala Harris was going to lose, and so they jumped ship and realized they didn't want to piss off Trump too much.
Yeah, right. It seems something like that, or at least a realization that
they weren't going to lie. They weren't going to lie you into everyone loves her. She's going to win. Support her, and not just take another L.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You just realize at a certain point that they're like, you can only lie to your audience and have your audience shrink and shrink and shrink for so long before you're like, I will have no audience left. Like I have to at least be able to come to grips with this. So it seems like that. Anyway, here was Donald Trump just this morning being asked once again about Jeffrey Epstein. It really is interesting to me how much this will not go away. Here is Donald Trump. Oh, hold on. Oh, Natalie doesn't have. Oh, you know what? Maybe I. You know what? That's fine. Honestly, the clip wasn't that important. I think I might have forgot to.
I think I know which clip you're talking about. If you give me a second, I can send it.
No, you know what, Rob? Actually, just skip it because I'd rather just do this. Because this is this actually I think is because I just realized we only have like 10 minutes left in the show. So I think this is something I really wanted to talk about because this happened late last week. But I did find this interesting. Did you see this Dan Bongino tweet?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay. So let's pull up this tweet real quick, and I want to read this because I did want to make sure I said this on the show. Because we haven't exactly talked about this aspect of it. Okay, so here's Dan Bongino. He tweeted this out a few days ago. During my tenure here as the deputy director of the FBI, I have repeatedly relayed to you that things are happening that might not be immediately visible, but they are happening. The director and I are committed to stamping out public corruption and the political weaponization of both law enforcement and intelligence operations. It is a priority for us. But what I have learned in the course of our properly predicated and necessary investigations into these aforementioned matters has shocked me down to my core. We cannot run a republic like this. I'll never be the same after learning what I've learned. We are going to conduct these righteous and proper investigations by the book and in accordance with the law. We are going to get the answers we all deserve. As with any investigation, I cannot predict where it will land, but I can promise you that an honest and dignified effort at truth, not my truth or your truth, but the truth. God bless America and all those who defend her. Respectfully, Dan.
What about there was the even worse comment where he said, what I just saw shook me to my core.
Yeah, that was in there. Yeah, that was in. Yeah, did you miss that? Yeah. You know, he said that shook me to my core. We can't run a republic like this. I mean, look, I don't know. I think I speak for a growing segment of people whose knee-jerk response to this is, show me something. Show me something, man. Like, people want to believe. People really do want to believe in this. And what you see here is, and this is why, but you know, forget even the clip of Trump today, but just all you really need to know is the point is that Donald Trump's still defending it today. And you know, the idea that they're like, look, it just seems obvious. They're like, we got to get some of that energy back. Some of that, hey, we're getting to the bottom of this. You're so mad about the corruption. I know we've been in for a while and it doesn't seem like we're making moves, but we're making moves. We're going to do this. But I will just say, you know, I think at this point, you know, it almost, did you ever see, there's an episode of Seinfeld. Did you ever see this where George Costanza gets caught in a lie with Susan's parents about having a home in East Hampton?
I don't remember this one.
he lies about having a home in East Hampton, and they're like, oh yeah, and then like he overhears that they think he doesn't really have a house in East Hampton, and so then he invites them out to the house in East Hampton, and then they take him up on it, and then and it's this game of chicken where he drives them all the way out to East Hampton, and then he gets out of the car, and they're just like in the middle of this tall grass, and he goes, got to go on foot from here. And then like he's just like constantly putting off like what this inevitable thing, like this is going to have to come to a conclusion at some point, and you're going to be found out for being a fraud if you don't have something there at the end of this. I will say this, that I think specifically with the Russiagate stuff, which seems to be what they are attempting to pivot to, and I don't see how I'm wrong about this, but tell me if you think I am. But I think that Donald Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, and Pam Bondi are now all in terms of their entire reputation, like not their positions of power, but their entire reputation. They are now all in on prosecuting Obama and Clapper and Brennan and Comey. Like, I don't see how, if you don't end up prosecuting these guys, you ever recover your credibility. Because you've now, in order to pivot off of the Epstein thing, you've now said publicly that Obama committed treason. We have the proof and we've sent it to our Justice Department. So you now laid down the gauntlet. Dan Bongino, if you're sitting here, like, this is just my point. If you're saying I'm forever changed by this, well, guess what? We better be forever changed by this too. At some point, I mean, like, I don't know how long they have before this shatters, but like, and I think not that long. Like, you got to be making moves toward this, exposing this, letting us know, hey, Dan, what changed? What is this information that changed your life? Do we ever get to know? Because I'm just saying, I think in a weird way, they are burying themselves with doubling down on, we're going to drain the swamp. We're going to get to these real criminals in DC. Because like now, if you don't, you're like by your own admission a failure. It's George W. Bush having to admit there were no weapons of mass destruction. Once you admit that, there's no, I mean, dude, you launched a war on those grounds. So that's it. You're done now. Tell me where I'm wrong.
I guess I have a slightly different take here. And firstly, you know, I was yelling about this on the Run Your Mouth podcast a while ago, and I might try and bring back this joke, but these people are television people, and at times it feels like clickbait presidency. And they just don't realize, like, what worked for you in radio and television. You don't need to have good ratings. We don't need to be tuned in. You don't need to be the focus of our attention. You got to go govern. And so they keep teasing these storylines, and we're actually all angry because it's like, you guys aren't making television. You're actually there. And if you have something, fucking show it to me. And if you don't have to tell me that you're working on something. I don't need to be tuned in for a cliffhanger after the commercial break. If you have something, show it to me. So I think Bongino's being the world's biggest dumbass here. With that said, I also just think they're playing a different game. I think Trump, listen, I don't think Trump's a pedophile. I mean, maybe he is. I don't fucking know. I think in some capacity, his name appears enough times in the Epstein's file that it doesn't look good for him to be putting it out, and he doesn't want to put it out. And now he's making all sorts of claims of, listen, this thing's a hoax. They had the files. They could have put things into it. It seems like he's trying to sell the story of, oh, this is Russiagate again, and they're trying to make me look bad. I think for all of these people, you and I care about credibility. These people don't. Donald Trump wants to be able to retire from office, not be gone after for crypto scams, for Mar-a-Lago memberships, for Saudi money in hotels. He doesn't actually want to go out of after the deep state. Donald Trump's in this for Donald Trump. He doesn't want the Epstein storyline. He wants to move on from it. Dan Bongino will never go back to just being an independent podcaster with an audience that thinks, hey, this is an honest guy. But he might get a great Fox News job. He might get the book deal. Pam Bondi will go back to whatever law firm she was working for Cutter or whatever else, as, oh, wow, this lady's a great liar. So while you and I are sitting over here being like, wow, these people are losing all credibility, they're now in the power circuit. Donald Trump wants to get through his presidency and not get buried on the way out. So it might be that his name's in there, or he just doesn't want to actually take on the political structure. The people at the CIA said, hey, this blackmail is really important to us. And we can't have you undermining the assets that we already have or our operation. And he doesn't want to take them on. It could be as simple as that. Dan Bongino at this point, he goes, shit, I took this job. I'm riding this one through. And he won't go back to independent media. But he's not going to be without a job. He's not going to be unrewarded.
You're not wrong. No, it's a fair point. But it's, your point isn't, it's a very good point. But it's not necessarily in conflict with what I'm saying, where I'm just going like, well, look, but if this all becomes clear that that's what it is, then like all the people who support them politically should not support them anymore. And I do think they will lose that. Now, that being said, as the point I've made before, and we'll have to wrap on this, but is like the person I see who this actually hurts the most is JD Vance and his presidential ambitions, because JD Vance is kind of left as the only guy in the room who's like, hey, but I need the voters again. Like, no, I know what you're saying. Like, Rob, like, yeah, Dan Bongino could go get a nice job and all this. And like, JD Vance could go get a nice job too. But JD Vance wants to be president of the United States of America. And I think this is going to be very, very hard for him. He's kind of in an impossible situation. Can't really distance yourself from the administration when you're the VP. So you got to say you defend it. And then when you say you defend it, you're on record. And that's where you were. And good luck convincing people that you're going to release the Epstein files this time. Anyway, all right, we got to wrap on that one. Catch you guys tomorrow with a brand new episode. Thanks as always for tuning in. Peace.